as the world continues to mourn the loss of Prince Philip on Friday at the age of 99. We're joined by Camilla Tominey and Matthew Wright. Good morning to both
Morning.
of you.
Morning.
It's lovely to see you both. Yeah, it was... I know we were all expecting him to die and everything like that, but on Friday it was still quite shocking.
Yeah.
Camilla, I mean, how did you take the news? Did you know it was going to happen?
Well, I think there was a sense after a month-long spell in hospital at the age of 99, there were hopes that he would make it to his 100th in June. But equally, I think we got wind that overnight on Thursday his condition had worsened. And we knew that he had been back at Windsor Castle, just taking it very, very easy. I think great comfort has been taken not only by the Queen, but his children and grandchildren, that the Queen was by his side throughout. Weirdly, the pandemic put the couple together when they might unexpectedly not have been like that, because
Great point.
if it wasn't for coronavirus, he would have remained at Wood Farm in Sandringham. She would have carried on with the day job, as he used to describe it, down in Buckingham Palace. And actually, they've spent the last 12 months together in lockdown at Windsor. And I think that's been lovely. They've lunched and dined together when they otherwise wouldn't have. And we had these extraordinary tributes yesterday, didn't we, from the children outside All Saints Church in Windsor. So the Earl and Countess of Wessex spoke very movingly about how the Queen was coping, this notion that she's been amazing and asking about others. We also heard from the Duke of York, which was quite surprising because he's been out of action and below radar for the last 18 months. And actually, he spoke movingly at the fact that his mother had talked about this huge void that needs to be filled in her life, and the fact that she found it a miracle that I think he had been at home and died at home. He had always said he didn't want to end up dying in hospital. And this idea that the Countess of Wessex summed up of him just slipping away really peacefully.
You couldn't wish for a better way to go, really, could you?
Not at all.
She said took her by the hand.
Yes, which was sweet.
Lovely
And I think with the Queen being by his bedside, that was really important. But from the nation's perspective, yes, it's not a tragedy when a 99-year-old who's had such a great innings passes away. But at the same time, I think that idea that he was the nation's grandfather, and also the emotions are then automatically with the Queen, aren't they? We all watch her as a widow approaching her 95th birthday, and we are used to her having him one step behind her for her whole reign. And there's a sense, isn't there, I think, across the world of just wanting to buoy her up. And that's also the spirit of the family now. So much is going to be said about Prince Harry's arrival in the UK and the fact that there are tensions in the background. But what I'm hearing from inside the palace is we're now thinking about a unified family backing the Queen. The focus is on her this week, making sure she can get through Saturday.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit.
And I think it's really important that we don't get distracted by that sideshow, because, I mean, Matthew, just get your take. I mean, I think at the heart of all of this is just as a family has lost, and especially in the times we're living in, when so much loss has happened in the last year, a family has lost a husband, a father and a grandfather.
Absolutely. It's been a... First of all, I thought Camilla spoke absolutely beautifully there about where we as a country see Philip. I completely agree. I'm a Republican, so I'm not, massively in favour of a royal family, but I don't disagree with a word of that. I finally already... You've mentioned that the Prince Harry. The first thing I saw this morning was whether he's going to be allowed to wear his uniform, his military uniform, at the funeral, and we're presuming that he won't be allowed to. And you just thought already we're looking at... the bits that, for me, that they're just not relevant, and but that's the thing about the royal family. Is everybody's got a view. They live through our newspapers and through our media, and comment and opinion is part of that process. But weekend where I've lost my wife's lost her uncle, and we lost Nicky Graham at 38. There's a lot of pain out there, and a lot of death. And you just said yourself, Dermot, we just come through a year of COVID where an awful lot of people have lost an awful lot of people.
It does bring it to the forefront,
yes,
doesn't it? It really does bring it to the forefront, because the first thing I thought was, like you said, my heart was with the Queen. I just thought, oh, my God, that sense of loss. My sister's just lost her husband, and I was just thinking about that. It wasn't the fact that they were a royal family, it was the fact that this family is just so sad. So sad.
There's also, I think, again, Camilla alluded to it, he's 99 and he's lived a full and magnificent life, and we're all aware of the fact he's lived a full and magnificent life. And whilst we're in a period of royal mourning, of national mourning, It's good to keep some kind of perspective, and I've really enjoyed the stories of his wicked sense of humour, and I find that the sort of the human side of him, the more sort of earthy side of him, has been a real thrill to hear it.
Yeah.
My favourite story, and there's been a lot of them, was his ability, his unnerving ability to pick anybody in a room who had the worst hangover, and then zero in on them for
would it
however
be
long
today?
he was there. And I just love that earthiness there, which is, you know, so often we just see him one step behind the Queen, being, you know, the royal consort. So lovely to hear the other side.
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
really interested in the whole funeral side of things, because what's interesting to me is the royal family are not exempt to the COVID regulations,
No.
are they at all?
So
What's gonna be
basically,
happening?
so that kind of 30-strong limit on a guest list means that Boris Johnson has now stepped out and said, look, we'll leave the places to the family. It's a big family. We're expecting, of course, children and grandchildren, but not great-grandchildren. There are 2 members of the family who've recently had babies, Princess Eugenie and Zara Tindall. So we expect them to attend, but not with the babies.
Right.
And the clergy and other people who are going to be involved outside in what is going to be a very military-themed event, they are excluded from that 30-strong guest list. So what's interesting about the way the Duke planned his funeral is there's some very, very personal touches. So as well as a heavy military presence from all branches of the of the armed services, you're also going to have this scene where his coffin is convened from the state entrance of Windsor Castle to the steps of St George's Chapel. So they're the same steps that viewers will recognise because Harry and Meghan stepped through them for the wedding.
Wow.
His coffin's going to be convened by this Land Rover hearse, this
Electric Land Rover.
this specially
Even better.
adapted vehicle.
He designed it.
Yeah, he designed it because he had this enthusiasm for engineering. But also, he did famously say to the Queen, you know, just carry me off in a Land Rover. So when we heard this...
You know you're going to get there then, don't you?
Exactly. Reliable vehicle. But also, that just speaks to a man who was the Ranger of Windsor Great Park for more than half a century, right? Would often be seen driving around in a Land Rover. Equally, do you remember when the Obamas came over and he went to collect them and drove and stuck the president in the back? So this idea of there being also lovely little maritime touches. So when the coffin is going to enter the chapel, there's going to be a piper playing the sounds that are played on a naval ship when the crew is called or when a distinguished visitor comes on board, and equally another piping call as the coffin goes into the chapel.
Oh,
so this
so
has been
extra, I love it.
really, really carefully thought out and will be properly
And the
choreographed.
coffin, I mean, I think this speaks to a wider issue, which is we only talk about people in this way when they pass. So there's so much I didn't know about him. I didn't know, you know, I sort of grew up watching Prince Charles talking about the environment and people saying he was batty when he was hugging trees, and now 30 years down the line we look at how farming is, you know, his approach to sustainable farming. But that pretty much came from his dad, didn't it? And his love of the environment and science. And to that end, I think the coffin's being made from wool, is that right?
Yeah.
I think, yes, some sort of sustainable
Eco-friendly.
material.
Yeah.
Eco-friendly, but also it's going to have his standard over it and then his naval cap and sword and a wreath of flowers, which are very much, again, in keeping with him. But he was almost the original royal moderniser, wasn't he, Matthew?
Yeah. I think, I mean, you can see... Just in terms of, I suppose you get the space, don't you, as the consort? You don't have to do the front line all the time and maintain dignity at all times. He's got the opportunity to explore, I think, different things that you could use as sort of his royal powers to put out there. And the arts, I mean, I still think the fact that he's the Accrington Camera Club comes up as the first thing on his list of his many things. He was involved in so many things because I suppose he had that opportunity to lend the sort of royal approval to lots of different diverse organisations.
He also...
I was reading today, sorry, just on the, you know, the carriage driving. So he was mad into his carriage driving, and he befriended this guy up in Cumbria, an ex-rag and bone man, I think it was, and they became lifelong friends through their passions and their interests.
The other thing to remember is he always wanted transparency for the family. So he famously said, you know, we cannot be seen as a secret society. And that is why he was the one who advised the Queen to televise the coronation in 1953.
I heard of it, yeah.
He also was the one who said that they should have let the cameras in for that reality TV show, which back in 1969 was quite controversial, but now seems completely tame by comparison.
There's a whole episode of The Crown that they based around that as well.
Exactly. But also it made the royals seem human, and he did have a troubled childhood, and he had experienced life that wasn't gilt-edged and easy and privileged. It was actually really, really tough. His family were exiled from Greece. He was alone for many years of his childhood, sent to Gordonston to basically get on with it. But that gave him that kind of spirit of keep calm, carry on, that was has been emulated throughout their 73-year marriage.
It's funny, isn't it? I think sometimes with the royals, and I've only met a couple of them. I've only really met Prince Harry and William, but they seem. It's almost like when they're unencumbered by the fuss around them, they seem to be, the shackles almost come off them. He was the epitome of that, wasn't he? He hated fuss. He hated too much rigmarole. And I think that's obviously going to come out. Like, this is the funeral he kind of would have wanted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's because it's so scaled down. I mean, it's true to say that the idea of people being discouraged to lay flowers or queue up to sign condolence books would be absolutely in keeping. The other ironic thing is there were people kind of rallying around trying to come up with a 100th birthday celebration. He didn't care. He was a reluctant celebrant. He famously said to Giles Brandreth, you know, I can't think of anything worse than living to 100. And then when Brandreth said, well, how would you like to be remembered? And he said, I couldn't really care less. So there's something lovely, isn't it? Such a man of his generation who is remarkable and has these extraordinary skills and makes this lifelong contribution to public service and then doesn't really want to take any credit. There's something so refreshing about that in this kind of needy era of people in positions of celebrity wanting attention. Yeah. And he just didn't, in life and as in death.
And do you know what? It made me sad that the Queen is always giving away those cards when you turn 100 and she didn't get to give her husband one.
I know, that is sad. Although...
She could have rolled over as well and done it, couldn't she, in bed? She would have just been...
But I think, you know, the tributes that have poured out from her children and indeed the nation and the world at large, it's completely true to say that they are, at the moment, taking such comfort in that. They are overwhelmed by the response, just from... And although people have been discouraged from dropping flowers and indeed donations are being encouraged instead, I think there is this sense that, you know, generations of people turning out to pay their respects, they've really, really been buoyed by that.
Yeah.
And has Prince Harry arrived yet?
He's arrived, yes.
Is
he
he
arrived
here?
yesterday.
He's quarantining for
So he's
5
quarantining.
days, yeah.
So then he quarantines for 5 days,
5 days.
takes a test,
Yeah.
and then if he's OK.